Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tigers Den Live. I'm your host, Will Figueroa, and as always, we're joined with the founder of ClevelandRain.com, the creator of the Tiger Framework, and the man who lives the Tiger mindset, Paul Routhier. Paul, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning, Will. How are you?
I feel rejuvenated, and that's what we're going to go
Oh,
into today.
great. Rejuvenation on a Monday. Ouch.
Rejuvenation.
You're bending me
Rejuvenation
backwards
on a
now.
Monday. Well, sometimes you have to, have to schedule it. And for me, it was Monday. In any event, the last few times that we've spoken about rejuvenation, we've spoken about how important it is to be intentional with it, what it is to find rejuvenation for yourself. And quite frankly, I think it's just time that we speak about how we do it ourselves. And one of the things that I wanted to speak about was over the weekend, and it really kind of inspired this whole idea of rejuvenation, not only of my physical environment, but my mental space too as well. And I I find that I don't do spring cleaning, but I do fall sweeps, and just very naturally, and the reason being is because when I grew up, as I was growing up through school, one of the things that we did before we kind of started the school year, or around this time in September, was just prior to school. My dad, and it was very specifically my dad would come in and go, "All right, son, we have a new school year. We're going to get ready. We're going to make this successful. What do you need?" And I said, "Books and, pens and this and that." And he goes, "Great. Let's go into your room first." Like totally disregarded all the materials and was like, "What do we need to make sure that you have like a really good study area?" And I'm very, very grateful that my father finagled his way in getting me a beautiful wood desk that lasted me years, and put it in my bedroom right next to my bed. And I used that desk for years, and he made sure that every year it was cleaned out. If there was crud, if there was bad pens, or bad stationery, it would be replaced. Just absolutely just the basics, just getting back to foundations, getting back to the basics of what I needed in order to have a clean slate and to be able to work effectively. And I found that as I continue this, even as an adult in my own life, I found that it just happens to be around the middle to end of September where I find myself just kind of going through my closets and going through my book bag and like dumping everything out and going, what is it that I actually need? And so for me, in my mind, for whatever reason, I start my year in September, and it just kind of falls in alignment with the school year in academics. And as I was going through my bag and I was going through my closet, especially my bag, because I carried it around everywhere. Man, do I carry so much stuff? And I'm sure that so many people do the same thing, that over time, as we're trying to ensure that we execute, as we try to be generous, as we try to live tenaciously, we just pick up stuff when we don't even realize the stuff that we're just kind of holding on to for so long, until eventually, you have an alarm go off, or maybe it's, scheduled, where you got to clean out your stuff. I found pins and buttons from a year ago from a conference that I went to that had nothing to do with what I'm doing anymore. And it's so interesting that as I took apart my bag, the pens that didn't even work anymore, the tools, the cables, the adapters. It was so interesting. And so when I took everything out and I finally put everything back in, the bag was lighter. I felt so much better about myself. I didn't feel the weight of that bag, and in turn ultimately the responsibility, right? Because every time I put that bag on, I knew that, I was headed to work. I was headed to uh, appeal or fulfill my responsibilities. And I put on my bag this morning and I thought, oh, I can do this. This feels so much better. Then, of course, my closet, and then, of course, my clothes. And I have a bunch of clothes that I put together, and we're going to be donating that to a local organization here that does just amazing work here in Central Florida. And it felt so good. I had no idea something as simple as cleaning not only my physical space can also have an effect almost multiplicatively in my mindset. And I feel lighter today. I don't know how else to explain it. I feel so much lighter being cleaner and just I guess less weight. I don't know. Can you relate? Is there something that you can think of that is similar to that regard?
So, do you have virus software on your computer?
I do not.
Do you-
I am on a Mac and I use a VPN and I have rules and policies in place that I don't open up emails that I don't recognize. And
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I've been shaped by the corporate Fortune 50 enough that the IT police would be very proud. It also helps that that's kind of my background was IT security. So
Right.
uh,
So,
no,
yeah,
so me personally, I don't.
yeah. All right. I'll go a different way with that then. I'm sorry. Did not expect that answer. Wow. Uh, uh, so, do
Uh,
you optimize your hard drive? How often do you
yes,
do that?
yes. I probably not as often as I should, but uh, every so often I'll go through. I think the cadence is maybe once or twice a year where I'll see what's on my desktop, what's on the cloud, what do I really need to hold on to, what are things that I can stream, what are things that I really need to uh, focus on, things like that. So
Yeah.
about twice a
So,
year I'll go through like my content management, if you will, and kind of clean things out and delete and reorganize and stuff. So maybe twice a year.
yeah. Yeah. So, I call that optimizing your hard drive. You know.
Okay.
So, I mean, it really kind of does make sense because as
Yeah.
you're pulling all the junk out of the way, it allows you to operate in a more optimum thing. We have a rule at my house, like everybody who gets in the car with stuff takes the stuff out of the car. It's kind of an automatic thing.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I love the fact that you do that like once a year. I do that like once a week.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
yeah. There's yeah, like I'm paperless, but stuff comes in the mail, and my wife throws stuff in my office, and the kids throw stuff in my office. And once a week, I'll just dump it all into the scanner and shred it, scan it and shred it, and get rid of the junk. I try to keep a junkless society
Good for
around
you,
me
man.
because
I wish.
because you're right, that is rejuvenation. They clear the junk out and kind of get to a place where you can see everything that you want to deal with. It's kind of important. It's important in life and in business um, that you keep the junk out of your way. Um, you've gone since we're mentioning cars. I'm sure you've seen the auto shop that's clean and all the
Yes.
tools are in place and they're very,
Yes.
very clean. Uh, um, when I go to Tesla's, when I have to bring my car in, I pull into their place and like I could eat off their floor and it's nice and
It's
clean.
pristine, right?
It's
It's
pristine,
pristine.
right? And then you go to take my daughter's car into the shop that works on her car, and it's completely a craziness that I don't know how they find their tools and all of that type of stuff. And if you think about that being your mind, I want my mind over here as opposed to over here.
Yeah,
Just
there's something to be said about clutter in your physical life and how it taxes your cognitive, your thought life, right? I and to your point, I remember growing up and going to this mechanic shop. My first car was a 2001 Toyota Corolla, and I mean, I absolutely destroy this car. I put so many miles on it. I bought it with, I think I had maybe 15 or 20,000 miles, and in maybe a year and change, I put like 100 grand of miles on this car. I was really like just road warrior, contract work, early IT stuff, right?
yep.
And I'll never forget going to one of my dad's local shops, and uh, He said, yeah, yeah, take it over to so and so's place. And I remember going over and kind of looking and being like, oh man, like what am I getting myself into? I mean, in and of itself is intimidating, right? Especially if you're holding business, right? Imagine if it's your business and people are coming in and they're seeing the mess, right? And yeah, sure, being in cars is a messy, quote unquote, messy kind of career, but there's to your point, right? You can clean up afterwards. You could make it a point to have good processes and procedures in place to make sure that with every car in place, it has its tools in place. It has its place for everything. And I remember going into the shop and you could walk through the soot. It was just hanging in the air. There no air conditioning, no
Yeah.
ventilation, and you put your hand on the reception table and it's like, oh, that's gross. It's like all the stuff comes off and crud. And to your point, uh I went to a Tesla shop and it's absolutely pristine. I went in, they had, I want to say maybe 10 or 12 cars for basic maintenance in that shop, and it was absolutely immaculate. Now, does it matter that one is a combustion engine, the other one's electric? Yeah, maybe, but it to your point, it speaks to the importance of the environment and having those processes and procedures in place because they could have had their tools everywhere, right? They could have had junk and different liquids or whatever the case may be all over the place, and they don't. And there's something to be said about, and I remember so distinctly growing up. I hated this, and now I know I need it in my life. Having just procedures, like SOPs, like standard operating procedures, policies in place, like your own rules or your own discipline to say, yeah, you know what, when I'm done with this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this down in its place. How important it is just to have guardrails. I don't know how else to describe it. It's so important. What have you seen with some of the clients that you've worked with, and what are some of the things that you've put in place with people that you've seen an immediate impact with, most especially in regards to just their thought life, maybe even mental health? What are some of the things that immediately you ask and qualify and say, yeah, you know what, try and put these two things in place and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny walking into a client so you can ID people just by walking by their desks. You know, you kind of know who's got it together and who doesn't. Just based on their desk configuration and the stack of paper that's seemingly all over the place. Um, it's interesting. I love the fact that you brought up cleaning because it's like first order of business: clean your desk, get it straightened out, get it put in orders, and that
Mm,
helps put your mind in order. Just a real simple thing is getting yourself organized to get your day going, and then keeping it that way. Because that way you don't uh, stray off and lose what you're doing because you're looking for paper or you're looking for something. So it's really key. We're talking about rejuvenation today as opposed to cleaning, but I think for me, last weekend, I went out and I moved 10 tons of rock from my front yard to my backyard, and I think one of the things that cleanse the mind and the soul is manual labor. Every once in a while, getting out and just like working it hard. Going to the
getting
gym,
into
of
the rhythm of
course,
something, right?
but getting in. I'm one of those people that kind of starts a project and I don't like to stop till it's done. So my wife has to run out of the house and go, "You need to eat. You need to do something," because I get my head down and I'm getting it done. But I walked away from that weekend sore, maybe, but I felt great, man. I was like ready to go for the next week. So rejuvenation isn't specifically laying around; it is doing something that's reconstructive to your mind and your body and your soul. So a lot of people meditate. I love people who meditate on specific issues, right? They're running into an issue in the week and they'll sit down and they'll focus, clear everything else out of their mind, clean it out, and focus on that one issue and try to think through it and what they can do to either overcome, get around it, or change their perspective. So it's the cleaning is a really interesting perspective, because before you can do that, you have to clean everything else out, and that's really kind of the basis of it all, is kind of moving all the junk out and being able to
Yeah,
focus.
and that's what I noticed too was in that's what I noticed. That the junk that cleared out wasn't initially junk, right? It was, oh yeah, that's going to be a future asset, or oh yeah, I'm gonna use that later, and oh yeah, I'll totally use this for XYZ client or for myself, whatever the case may be. And then it just sits because the plan wasn't put in place, right? We didn't execute against it, right? Everything that we speak about in regards to Tiger. And so it just sits, and then it takes up space, and then it's like, oh yeah, I probably should do that. And you try and write it down and nothing happens, and it's like, oh yeah, I need to put that into a plan, and then you don't do it, right? At least me, I'll speak for myself, right? And it's so interesting that oftentimes, and this happened to me recently too as well. Unfortunately, I had to speak to an organization that we could no longer do business with, and it's so interesting that even in client work, when the when there isn't clarity, when there is just junk, right? And I'll just say junk behavior. When there's junk behavior, it puts a load on the rest of the organization, right? Because then people have to catch up on things, or people have to clean things up, or have to mitigate a loss, or whatever the case may be, right? And it's so interesting that even in business, when working with, and I'll speak for myself, when we were working with this other organization, we found that there was junk behavior, and finally it got to a point where we said, you know what, we're gonna have to move on. We're happy to work with you in another time. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to move forward because of such and such behavior. And they said, yeah, you know what, we'll come back, we'll think about it. We'll consider everything that you're speaking about. um, and we were very clear. We said that we're not going to continue working with them from this point. And it was tough. It was tough to let go of something that had potential, to let go of something that uh, could have grown someone, could have had an impact. And then what, for whatever reason, uh, not even a few days later, I get an invite to a major, major opportunity where I get to travel and I get to fly out and all expenses paid. And it was almost as if life was testing and saying, hey, are you being true to your own morals, your own principle? Can you actually sweep your own dust? Because there's another opportunity coming this way. And I just felt so relieved because I felt like I was holding on. I was holding on to this thing. I was like, no, I don't want to let it go. But it was hurting me. It was hurting me. And to let that go in and of itself was a massive, massive relief for me. So that's the first thing. Um, it did create a little bit of a weight, but the weight in which the junk behavior in comparison to the weight that it created was night and day. A whole different way of just breathing, for God's sakes. And then to know that just 2 days later, an opportunity comes my way to travel and to help another organization. Had I still held on to the organization that had the junk behavior, I would not have been able to take on that opportunity. And there's something to be said about living to your own standards, living that, executing against your standards, executing against your, I guess, morality, if you will. I don't know how else to describe it, that allows uh for you to be able to act uh in a fresh new way, and in a way that allows for you to be able to breathe, and everything that we speak about, right? Thinking creatively, inspired behavior, right? Helping someone else, having an impact, right? So really interesting that even in business, when clearing out the junk, uh, that even then that has a business. It's not just the personal impact, but even in business, it has a business impact as well. Can you relate?
Yeah, yeah, I can. I actually have a question for you, based on that, because one of the things about cleaning out the junk is not letting junk get in there in the first place. And I'm kind of curious, as you looked at that hindsight 2020, were there things, if you were looking through the lens of your morals, your all of that, that you could have picked up on before you even got involved in with that organization? And
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things, and you're absolutely right. I did look back on this and reflect on this, and I think more than anything, I think there could have been not more communication, but clearer communication, right? There were just certain things that in my personal organization, right, that we just don't offer. It's just not in our remit. And so one of the things that had happened was the client had brought on a different firm to do the things that we don't do, right? Like we have a
Mhm.
specialty in what we do, and we kind of know our role and stay in our lane, kind of thing. And bringing in that organization, there was a bunch of different conflicts involved, contractual conflicts, behavioral conflicts, integrity conflicts, and so in reflection, and even in the review of the contract, what I found, and one of the things that we implemented immediately afterwards was an inverse clause. So not only do we have a clause in our contract that says that in our organization we must go ahead and uh, be transparent in who we are and make sure that there isn't a conflict of interest type of thing. But we noticed that there wasn't anything inverse. There wasn't
Ah,
anything that had, we didn't have anything in place where the client also had to do the same. It was always us showing trust towards the client, and we didn't have anything the other way around, right? Certain terms that which showed that the client showed trust towards us, and vice versa, right? Because we had it as the business towards the client, but we didn't have it from the client towards the business.
yep.
So that was one of the first things that we put in place. It was a very easy addition to add into our contracts. But then the second was really kind of considering, this portion of the business. Can we do this? Can we scale this? Is this still within scope? And sitting down and understanding this, uh, going through it, and you go through pros and cons, you go through a SWOT analysis, you go through all this stuff, and we realize that, yeah, we need to start going into this. And so one of the things that we started doing is really kind of going in, and that level of service that we don't do, that we kind of put off for a long time. We decided, yeah, you know what, if we're going to mitigate that type of risk, we should offer that as well. And so we're testing some things with other clients as a kind of like what we speak about, right? It's, in generosity, it creates opportunity, and in that opportunity, it allows for you to refine your processes. And so uh, being able to generously offer some of our tools and services to our clients, as we refine that option, as we refine that service, it allows for us to say, yep, we like that, nope, we're not going to do that, we're going to change that, we're going to optimize this. And so those are kind of the two things that we ended up doing. And to bring it back to rejuvenation, it feels so much better to know that this thing that didn't allow us to feel complete as an organization, now that we're actively working towards that, it feels so much better to know that we have this, I don't know, arm, if you will, in the organization that we're developing uh, for future clients. And it feels good. It feels good. We feel very, very excited about it. um, it feels new. It's almost like a new business, if you will, right? And so because of that new revitalized energy, because of the ability to be able to swipe that dust away, both in life and in business, it allowed for us to say, hey, you know what, I think we can do this. Let's give this a shot, because we have the bandwidth. We could fit this in. We have our processes in place. We could fit this in between, points one and points two, and that felt great. And for us, it definitely allows for us to feel rejuvenated in that regard. Can you relate in that as well? I'm sure there's stuff that you realize that we can't do this in business, and we got to get rid of it. And in turn, it allowed for a different opportunity, or a different prospect to come in and go, oh yeah, thank God we didn't do that, because now we have this.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's about, pardon the language, but getting the bullshit out, right? So, getting the bullshit out really is
Yeah,
rejuvenating,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you don't feel like you're spinning in mud. So, yeah, along the terms of working with people, you always learn new things that you ask yourself a question. Number one is, can I do this? And the second question is, am I willing to do this? I mean, it's like staying in your lane is a really great statement, because you want to be the expert at what you do, and you don't particularly want to get out into other realms. And I've probably managed 10,000 projects in my career, and every day that you're alive, you're combating scope creep. And it's better if we do it this way, let's do it this way, let's do it this way. Well, then a lot of organizations miss the um, analyzing the impact of what they're going to do. Does it have a material change to the outcome? If it does not, then why are we doing it? And I think from a rejuvenation perspective, asking the right questions to yourself is very important. That kind of goes back to the meditation part of rejuvenation, because to me, beyond the existential meaning of meditation, it's really about focusing and asking yourself the right questions and getting rid of all the BS and just focusing on that one thing. Yes, to answer your question, thousands of times have I made specific changes to the way I deal with customers. I've fired a lot of customers because I'm there to do something for them, and they take my either advice or suggestions and they don't do it, and then they complain about you know the outcomes. Well, the outcome that you wanted didn't happen because you didn't do the tasks, or what the direction um, the direction that you needed to go with it. You went the opposite direction, so you got the opposite outcome. It's those clients have been fired over the years because I want to be successful, right? I want my clients to be successful, which makes me successful. And if they don't listen to what I have to tell them, then it's probably not a good fit. If they don't see me as the expert in that particular area, that's fine, but then the relationship doesn't have a good platform. We're not in agreement on where we're going to go, and that's kind of really key for that to happen, as you well know.
Yeah, I like the term firing clients. I think what I like more is, I think there's something to be said about feeling confident in that you are standing by your own principles, what you've put in place, and making sure that you are fortifying the answers to the questions that you asked yourself or to your organization. You spoke about the importance of making sure, especially in meditation, but even in business, asking the right questions. And if you are asking the right question and you are getting a very clear answer of what to do and what not to do, there is something to be said about the the difficulty in standing by that, while simultaneously, by defending that answer, the level of clarity and rejuvenation and real confidence. I don't know how else to describe it. I have
I'm
been,
going to jump.
go ahead, go ahead.
I want to jump in because I really think this is important, because it's really dealing in reality. I mean, really being in touch with reality, because you, as an employee, as a business, when you're taking on other people, you are not right for everyone, and not everyone is right for you. Okay, and I see so many entrepreneurs trying to stretch outside their core competencies to get a client because the opportunity is sitting there, but they should never have grabbed the opportunity in the first place because it doesn't fit within their business model. It doesn't fit with their business model, or it doesn't fit with them personally, personality. And you have to ask the right questions so that that there's a fit between your potential client, your potential employer, any of those potentials. And if you don't fit, then let it go, because that other opportunity is coming down the road for you. right? Ask the right questions, be strong, fire those clients that don't work, because another opportunity will come down the road. You're making space for the next opportunity that's the right one. Go ahead,
Yeah, it
Rob.
really
Sorry to
emphasizes
interrupt.
no, no,
Go
no.
ahead.
And it just and my point was that it really emphasizes the importance of rejuvenation specifically for the headspace so that you can defend those principles, so that you understand your role, so that you can have the confidence to ask the right questions, so that you don't, insert yourself into a project that is really stretching yourself beyond your capabilities, and then in turn creating a really bad experience for both yourself, the providing company, and the client, the receiving end of that service. It's so important, because if you're not in that right headspace, if you haven't asked the right questions, it goes right back to what we speak about in regards to the tiger mentality as a whole, right? When you are tenacious enough to keep asking the right questions, when you are making sure that what you're asking is inspired by the outcome in which the client desires and what you desire, right? When you understand the level of generosity sometimes that is required, the ability and what's needed to execute, it allows for you to operate in a rejuvenated state. It allows for you, and for me, to be in a rejuvenated state allows for me to operate confidently. And if I don't have that confidence, then things fall to the wayside. The client is not going to be happy. I'm not going to be able to provide that ROI for that client, or for myself for that matter. And it just speaks to how important rejuvenation is, and how it's so critical, and speaks to, quite frankly, your genius in making sure that in this framework for both life and business, especially in business, uh, it speaks to your genius and your experience in why it's important to ensure and instill and install and be intentional about rejuvenation. Because if you don't, then I think it just equates to burnout, right? I don't. I hope I never get to that point. I hope I never experience that. Um, but
Yeah,
otherwise,
and
go ahead, go ahead.
no, I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because, I'm not talking about not stretching your competencies, because you should stretch your competencies. That's how you grow.
For
What
sure, but not
I'm
overstretching,
talking
right?
about, well, it's not even overstretching. It's, does it bolt into what your mission is as a company
Mm,
or as a person? Does it bolt in? If I'm working with you on a server project, right, and then all of a sudden you're like, do you have any experience with cloud computing? I want you to jump this into a hybrid model. I'm, that bolts on, right? That bolts. Yeah,
right,
I'm going to make
right,
that
right, right.
stretch, right? But if you come to me and go, look, I want to open up this division of underwater basket weaving, okay, because we want, we want, we have seen an opportunity in the market,
Uh,
and we need to bring on 20 underwater basket weavers to fulfill the stock in this market, and we want you to manage
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
project. It doesn't bolt on. It's
yeah,
outside of the stream of my competency, and and that doesn't make sense. So I just want to be clear about that. I'm not talking about stretching your competency, because that's a good thing. I want to learn about cloud
sure.
computing and hybrid, and the best way to do that is engage with a client and work on that project together, since I'm already doing their servers, right? But for them to come and ask me, for the underwater basket weaving, that's not a fit. I can't bolt that on. I can't scale that. I'm not going to bring that into play.
Yeah, making sure that you're in alignment with the mission, vision, and values, and by stretching or even starting something new is still key, right? And to your point, and
Yeah.
that's my attempt to emphasize that as well, is it's not going to make sense to add underwater basket weaving. If you're in a marketing company, if you're in whatever the case may be, right? It doesn't fit, right? And so, and by trying to add something as ridiculous as that, you're going to add tension, you're going to add uh, it's just the complete inverse to what the Tiger framework is all about. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. I want to emphasize that point as well. I am conscious of time. We spoke about a lot of really good things, and specifically the importance of or the connection between rejuvenation and really the mental state and being able to execute because you're rejuvenated. What's something else that you want people to leave with today, Paul? If we haven't spoken about the one thing, what's the one thing you want people to really understand in regards to rejuvenation, keeping in mind everything that we spoke about today?
Well, I think the big takeaway today is clean the junk out. I mean, that's really clean, clean the desk, clean the mind, get things in order so that you have a good platform and are very focused, and find out what you need, meditate on what you need, and then what you need to overcome. And you'll be amazed at how you get inspired to get around and over those to whatever goal that you have.
I love it. I love it. I love all of it. In fact, I want everyone to love this. So if you too are looking to have tenacious behavior in your company, to be able to have that inspired thinking, to understand what it means to give generously, both as an individual and in business, to be able to execute and then ultimately know how important and live a truly rejuvenated life, head on over to clevelandrain.com. The Tiger framework, the Tiger mindset is so life changing. Paul and I were having a discussion post show just yesterday, and I know it's affected my life positively, and I'm sure that not only it'll affect yours, but your business as well, because I know it's done the same for me. And I want everyone to head on over and book your time. So head on over to clevelandrain.com, have it instilled, have it installed. Stop scratching your way through life and business and truly start clawing your way towards the success that you deserve. So with that, we'll see you next time where we start it all over again. We go even deeper into the Tiger framework and we talk about tenacity.